Remember when a folksy country lawyer in a rumpled gray suit could keep 28 million people glued to their televisions in a single night? From 1986 to 1995, Matlock made Andy Griffith a television legend all over again. Decades after Mayberry had already made him a household name once. On screen, it looked simple. A humble Southern gentleman shows up in that same gray suit, eats a hot dog, wanders around a crime scene, poking his nose where it does not belong, and somehow always finds the real killer right before the credits roll. Case closed, justice served, everybody go home happy. Or at least, that is what it looked like on screen. Behind the scenes, the story was a lot messier, a lot stranger, and honestly a lot funnier than anything that ever made it into the courtroom itself. 9 seasons, 2 different networks, and one very stubborn leading man produced a lot more drama off camera than the writers ever put on screen. Today, we are counting down 15 weird and surprising facts about Matlock. We are talking secret identities hiding right there in the opening credits, backstage shouting matches over how dark the character should really be, a mysterious missing jar of peanut butter, a spin-off of a spin-off, and a guest star who may or may not have been an actual alien. And trust us, you are not ready for what is waiting near the top of this list. So, hit that like button, subscribe if you have not already, and let us know in the comments if you can still hum that theme song from memory. Now, let us get into the countdown with number 15. Number 15. The show was built on a role Andy Griffith was never supposed to play. After the Andy Griffith Show ended in 1968, Griffith spent nearly 2 decades bouncing between television movies that mostly went nowhere, quietly fading from the spotlight that had once defined him. But one of those forgettable projects changed everything. In the 1984 miniseries Fatal Vision, Griffith played a sharp, salty federal prosecutor, a total departure from the warm, moral sheriff everyone remembered from Mayberry. NBC's entertainment president at the time, Brandon Tartikoff, watched that performance and saw something nobody else had noticed in years. Griffith could play tough. He could play sly. He could play a man who bent the rules just enough to win without ever losing his Southern charm in the process. Tartikoff brought in veteran Perry Mason producer Dean Hargrove and asked him to build an entire new series specifically around that discovery. The result was Ben Matlock, a Harvard-educated defense attorney with a Southern drawl, a bargain basement wardrobe, and a mind like a steel trap. Here is the part that makes it even stranger. The character was never written as a generic lawyer type that any actor could slide into on command. Every line, every courtroom habit, every ounce of folksy charm was built directly around Griffith's real voice and real instincts. Which means, if Griffith had said no, there is a solid chance Matlock never exists in any form at all, and network television would look completely different for the next 9 years. And here's the part that rarely gets mentioned. Griffith was already in his late 50s when the show launched, an age where plenty of studio executives would have quietly steered him toward retirement instead of a brand new leading role. Tartikoff bet an entire network time slot on the idea that audiences still wanted to spend an hour a week with Griffith, and that gamble ended up paying off for nearly a decade straight. Number 14. The pilot featured a future television icon playing a genuinely creepy villain. Before Matlock premiered as a full series in March of 1986, it launched with a 2-hour television movie designed to hook audiences fast and prove the concept could work. And sitting right there in the middle of it, playing a corrupt and unsettling trial judge willing to bend the law for his own benefit, was none other than Dick Van Dyke. Yes, the same Dick Van Dyke known for tripping over ottomans and tap dancing with chimney sweeps was cast completely against type as a genuinely sinister authority figure. It worked. The pilot pulled in a staggering 28 million viewers, instantly proving Griffith still had serious pull with American audiences after all those quiet years. But here is where it gets weird. Van Dyke's appearance was not just a one-time stunt casting choice destined to fade into obscure trivia. It quietly hinted at something bigger down the line. Years later, Van Dyke returned to the extended Matlock universe in a completely different role, this time playing a warm, likable crime-solving doctor who eventually landed his own spin-off series. We will get back to exactly how that unfolds later on this list, because the web of spin-offs this show quietly created is far stranger than you would ever guess from a courtroom drama about a guy who loves cheap hot dogs. And as part of that same spring, 1986 comeback push, Griffith also starred in a separate television movie called Return to Mayberry, essentially reuniting with his old cast in the same handful of months Matlock premiered. For a brief stretch, viewers genuinely could not decide which Griffith they were more excited to see again, the beloved small-town sheriff or the sharp new courtroom operator. Number 13. Ben Matlock might be based on a real, celebrated Georgia legend. Here is a detail casual fans rarely uncover, even after years of watching reruns. Rumor has it that Ben Matlock was loosely inspired by an actual defense attorney named Bobby Lee Cook, a real-life legal powerhouse who built his career out of a small mountain town in Georgia rather than a flashy big city office tower. Cook earned a reputation as one of the most formidable criminal defense minds in the entire state, eventually becoming known as something like the Dean of Georgia Criminal Defense Attorneys, representing everyone from everyday rural clients to major corporations facing serious trouble. Sound familiar? A small-town charm, hiding a razor-sharp legal mind, is basically Ben Matlock's entire personality summed up in one sentence. What makes it even funnier is that creator Dean Hargrove never fully confirmed this connection was intentional, leaving fans and journalists to connect the dots themselves for decades afterward. And here is the kicker. Unlike Ben Matlock, who eventually hung up his gray suit for good in 1995, Bobby Lee Cook reportedly kept practicing law well into his 90s, decades after the fictional version of him left the airwaves for the last time. So, in a strange twist of fate, the real inspiration outlasted the television legend by a very long margin, still working cases long after his small-screen counterpart had already retired. Cook reportedly never sought out the comparison himself and rarely commented publicly on the resemblance, which only added to the mystery for fans trying to figure out exactly how much of Ben Matlock's folksy courtroom style was borrowed straight from real life. Whether Hargrove admits it or not, the parallel is hard to unsee once you know Cook's story. Number 12. One actress was secretly playing two completely different women at once. Nancy Stafford is remembered by most fans as Michelle Thomas, Matlock's steady legal partner, starting in Season 2 of the show. But before that, back in Season 1, Stafford actually appeared as a completely different character, a high-class call girl named Karen Nelson, who took the witness stand during one memorable courtroom episode. Here is where it gets strange. Even after Stafford was promoted to series regular playing Michelle Thomas, the opening credits for several following seasons quietly kept using her original Karen Nelson footage, shown only from behind, meaning eagle-eyed viewers were technically watching a clip of a different character every single episode without ever realizing it. On camera, it looked like a simple continuity choice nobody would ever question. Off camera, it meant the show's own intro sequence was essentially hiding a secret identity in plain sight for years at a time. Casual viewers never noticed a thing. Die-hard fans who paused and rewound their tapes eventually did, piecing the mystery together long after the fact. And once you know it, you genuinely cannot unsee it. That single detail alone turned an ordinary opening credits sequence into an accidental Easter egg that quietly outlived several entire seasons of the show. It also meant Stafford technically held two separate character credits running in parallel for years, something almost unheard of on a primetime drama that was not built around twins or evil doubles. Most actors would have pushed to have old footage replaced immediately. Stafford apparently just let it ride, and the show simply never bothered to update it. Number 11. Several cast members quietly auditioned as guest stars before ever becoming regulars. Believe it or not, some of Matlock's most familiar faces did not walk straight into their eventual roles. Daniel Roebuck, who became a full-time cast member in 1992, first appeared as a small one-episode guest character all the way back in Season 1. According to Roebuck, the day after his guest episode aired, the director pulled him aside at the craft services table and told him that Griffith himself wanted him added to the show permanently. That is not a small compliment coming from the actual star of the series, and Roebuck was far from alone in this. Carrie Lizer-Guest starred in a Season 6 episode long before eventually being cast as a series regular playing Cassie Phillips. Bryn Thayer made a small guest appearance in a Season 1 episode years before eventually returning as full-time cast member Leanne McIntyre. So, yeah, Matlock was basically running an unofficial audition pipeline disguised as ordinary guest star casting, and nobody watching at home had any idea they were seeing future regulars quietly trying out for the job in real time, sometimes years before it actually happened, for good. It says something about how tightly Griffith and the producers controlled casting on this show, that a guest spot was essentially treated like an extended job interview. If you clicked with the crew and clicked with Griffith on set, there was a real chance the writers would quietly find a way to bring you back permanently, sometimes with an entirely different character name attached the second time around. It is a casting pattern that rarely gets discussed outside of niche interviews and convention panels, yet it explains why so many familiar faces seem to pop up briefly in early seasons, only to reappear years later playing someone else entirely, as if the show had quietly been building a bench of trusted performers the whole time. Number 10. Matlock's entire wardrobe and car collection was one long-running inside joke about Ford. If you paid close attention, Ben Matlock never once strayed from his signature light gray suit, an outfit so consistent over 9 seasons, it practically became a character all on its own. But the suit was not the only unchanging detail viewers could set their watch by. Across the show's run, Matlock drove 3 separate generations of an all-gray Ford Crown Victoria, quietly upgraded every few years to match Ford's newest models rolling off the line. And here is where it gets genuinely interesting. This was not some random prop department decision made on a whim. It was a direct callback to Griffith's earlier role as Andy Taylor on The Andy Griffith Show, where his character famously drove Ford Galaxy sedans decade after decade without ever switching brands. Ford essentially followed Griffith from one hit series straight into another, turning 2 completely different characters, separated by 20 years and 2 entirely different genres, into one long, unofficial car commercial. What makes it even funnier is that most viewers at the time had no idea they were watching a subtle branding callback stretched across 2 entire decades of Griffith's career. On camera, it just looked like Matlock liked the color gray. Off camera, Ford was clearly playing a very long, very patient game. Production even reportedly kept multiple identical gray suits on hand at all times in case of stains, spills, or wardrobe emergencies during a shoot, meaning the single most recognizable outfit on the show was never actually just one suit at all, but an entire rotating closet built to look like exactly the same one every single week. Okay, we have to take a quick pause because if you are enjoying these behind-the-scenes stories, do us a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let us know in the comments which reveal has surprised you the most so far. Alright, let us get back to the countdown with number 9. Number 9. Griffith battled a real medical condition during nearly every single courtroom scene he filmed. Here is a detail that adds a whole new layer of respect to those dramatic closing arguments audiences loved so much. Griffith privately dealt with Guillain-Barré syndrome, a condition that can cause temporary paralysis, particularly affecting his lower legs during flare-ups. Because of this, he reportedly had to wear knee braces underneath his signature gray suit throughout the entire run of the show, especially during the lengthy standing monologues that closed out nearly every single episode. Standing for extended periods while delivering complicated legal dialogue would be genuinely exhausting for anyone in perfect health. For Griffith, it came with real physical pain that most viewers at home never had any reason to suspect while watching him pace confidently in front of a jury box. And here is the part that makes it genuinely impressive, rather than just sad. Griffith reportedly never once complained on set and never asked for those big scenes to be rewritten so he could sit down instead of standing through the pain. By most accounts, he nailed those big courtroom speeches on the first take almost every time, and the crew would actually applaud once he finished delivering them. So, the next time you watch Matlock deliver one of his signature dramatic reveals while pacing in front of a stunned jury, remember that behind that confident performance was a man quietly pushing through real physical discomfort just to sell the scene convincingly. Griffith reportedly kept this detail largely private during the show's run, preferring the illusion of an effortless, folksy performance over any public sympathy about a genuine medical condition affecting him behind the scenes. It was not something the show's marketing ever touched, and most fans only learned about it decades later. Number 8. The most demanding thing Griffith ever asked for on set was a jar of peanut butter. You might expect the star of a top-rated network drama to request a lavish trailer, a private chef, or some kind of extravagant perk befitting a genuine television legend. Griffith wanted none of that kind of treatment. According to people who worked closely with him on set, his one consistent request revolved around apples and peanut butter, a simple snack combination he genuinely loved and reached for constantly between takes. And when that peanut butter occasionally went missing from the craft services table, Griffith was reportedly known to get noticeably irritated about it, more irritated than he ever got over actual script problems. Sounds harmless, right? Not exactly, at least not to the crew members responsible for keeping the snack table stocked at all times. Here is the part that makes it even funnier. This was a man who had spent decades as one of television's biggest and most bankable stars, someone who could have reasonably demanded almost anything he wanted on set. And the one thing that actually got under his skin on a regular basis was running out of a basic pantry staple most people keep in their kitchen without a second thought. It is a small detail, but it says something surprisingly relatable about a man playing one of the most cerebral characters on television at the time. Crew members who worked multiple seasons apparently learned quickly to double-check the snack table before Griffith arrived on set each morning, treating an empty peanut butter jar with roughly the same seriousness as a missing prop or a blown light cue. It sounds like a joke, but for a working production crew trying to keep their star happy through long shooting days, it apparently became a genuine, unspoken rule of the set. Number 7. Griffith and the show's creator fought hard over exactly how dark Matlock should get. On screen, Ben Matlock was practically a Southern gentleman superhero, always landing firmly on the side of justice by the final scene of every episode. But behind the scenes, Griffith reportedly wanted something very different from the character he was playing week after week. According to accounts from people close to production, Griffith pushed hard for Matlock to have real, visible flaws, possibly even a drinking problem or storylines where the character's own questionable methods eventually landed him in legal trouble himself. Basically, Griffith wanted to move as far away from wholesome, morally spotless Andy Taylor as the network would possibly allow him to go. Creator Dean Hargrove was reportedly willing to hear character suggestions from his star, but drew a hard line whenever it came to altering the actual mystery plots that define the show's proven weekly structure. And these were not always calm, quiet, creative discussions held behind closed office doors either. By some accounts, Griffith would occasionally raise his voice during these disagreements, while Hargrove reportedly just stood there and calmly let him finish before moving forward with the show exactly as originally planned. That was not an accident. It was apparently just how these two strong, stubborn personalities worked through creative differences, week after week, season after season, for years. Despite the friction, both men clearly understood the arrangement worked, since neither one ever pushed hard enough to actually blow up the partnership. Griffith got to vent his frustration about playing another squeaky clean hero, and Hargrove got to keep the show running exactly the way that had already proven successful with millions of viewers. Number 6. The show quietly relocated states because of Griffith, and it changed an entire town's future. For its first 6 seasons, Matlock was technically set in Atlanta, Georgia, but was actually filmed clear across the country in Los Angeles, thousands of miles from where the story supposedly took place. That meant Griffith, who lived permanently in North Carolina, had to regularly commute all the way to the West Coast just to film episodes of a show happening in his own regional backyard on paper. By 1992, Griffith had reportedly had enough of that grueling travel schedule. He insisted production move to Wilmington, North Carolina, a far shorter and more manageable trip from his actual home. Here is where it gets genuinely surprising. That single personal decision did far more than simply shorten Griffith's commute time. It effectively helped establish Wilmington as a legitimate filming hub for future productions, paving the way for shows like Dawson's Creek and One Tree Hill to shoot in that exact same area years later. Local film officials have since credited Griffith as one of the main reasons television production took root in that town at all. So the next time you watch a completely unrelated teen drama filmed along the coast of North Carolina, you can thank a cranky Southern lawyer's desire for a shorter commute for helping make that entire filming location possible in the first place. A once quiet coastal town ended up with a legitimate production industry that outlasted Matlock itself by decades. All because one aging star did not want to keep flying cross-country every few weeks. It is the kind of ripple effect nobody involved in the original decision could have predicted. A personal scheduling complaint quietly reshaping an entire regional economy for decades to come, long after the last Matlock episode ever aired from those very same sound stages. Number 5. One episode accidentally turned into a full-blown network cameo party. In 1987, producers cooked up a plot specifically designed to lure viewers away from other NBC shows and get them permanently hooked on Matlock instead. The episode involved Matlock defending a Hollywood producer accused of murdering a network executive, which conveniently opened the door for a wave of celebrity cameos throughout the hour. Betty White showed up. So did a young Jason Bateman and Malcolm Jamal Warner, both huge names on other NBC shows at the time. And then, in one of the strangest guest appearances in the entire history of the series, the alien puppet from the hit sitcom ALF appeared at the very end of the episode, reminiscing about the murdered producer's difficult personality behind the scenes. Whether ALF was meant to be an actual extraterrestrial or simply a puppet existing within the fictional world of Matlock was, quite intentionally, left completely unexplained by everyone involved. And what makes it even stranger is that nobody involved ever bothered to clarify it afterward in any interview. So, somewhere in official Matlock continuity, there remains an unresolved question about whether a wisecracking alien from a completely different sitcom briefly crossed over into a Southern courtroom drama. And honestly, that particular mystery has never once been solved to this day. It remains one of the strangest single scenes in the entire 9-season run. A courtroom drama known for gray suits and hot dogs briefly turning into a full-blown NBC crossover event, complete with a puppet from another planet casually weighing in on a murder investigation, sandwiched right in between two of the network's biggest young stars like it was the most normal thing in the world. Number 4. NBC canceled the show, convinced it skewed too old, and quickly regretted the decision. After 6 genuinely successful seasons on NBC, Matlock hit a wall in 1992 when new network entertainment president Warren Littlefield decided to steer the network away from shows that appealed primarily to older viewers instead of younger ones. Matlock, along with another long-running drama on the network, got cut loose entirely in that programming shift. On camera, everything about the show still looked like a proven hit with a loyal audience. Off-camera, network executives had simply decided older viewers were no longer valuable enough to advertisers anymore. But Griffith and the show's producers were not ready to let the series die quietly without a fight. They pitched ABC on picking up the series, sweetening the deal by offering to relocate production to North Carolina to cut costs and dramatically ease Griffith's exhausting travel burden. ABC said yes almost immediately. Matlock went on to run for 3 additional seasons on its brand new network, proving that the audience NBC had quietly written off was still very much tuning in loyally every single week. That detail would come back to haunt executives who assumed older viewers simply did not matter anymore, especially once the show kept performing solidly on a completely different channel for years afterward. It is a rare enough outcome in television history that a canceled network drama gets picked up almost immediately by a direct competitor and manages to thrive there for 3 more full seasons, proving the original cancellation had far more to do with chasing a younger demographic than with any real decline in quality or audience interest. Number 3. The Matlock title screen quietly changed its look several times, and almost nobody noticed at the time. Long-running shows tend to have small, easily overlooked visual details that shift gradually over the years without much fanfare. The commercial break bumper screen, the simple graphic shown right before cutting to advertisements, started out with Griffith standing in front of a plain brown background during the earliest episodes of the series. Around 1987, that background quietly shifted over to a cooler shade of gray instead. Then, in 1992, coinciding neatly with the network move to ABC, the screen changed again, this time adding a small blue square framing the letter M inside the Matlock logo itself. By the 1993 to 1994 season, the entire bumper screen concept was phased out entirely and simply removed from broadcasts for good. None of these small changes were ever announced or explained on air to viewers. They just happened, one season at a time, buried inside a show most casual fans were watching purely for the courtroom drama, rather than the background graphics between scenes. It is a tiny detail, but it quietly maps out nearly a decade of subtle network branding decisions, hiding in plain sight between commercial breaks the whole time. Fans who have gone back and rewatched episodes in strict chronological order sometimes describe the shifting bumper screens as an accidental timeline, a quiet visual marker letting you guess roughly which season and which network you are watching, without ever reading an actual date on screen. It is a strange little piece of television archaeology, the kind of thing nobody notices in real time, but that quietly rewards obsessive rewatching decades later, long after everyone involved in choosing those background colors has probably forgotten they ever made the decision at all. Number 2. Matlock accidentally spawned a spin-off of a spin-off, and almost nobody realized it while it was happening. Remember that sinister judge Dick Van Dyke played back in the original pilot? That role was not actually where this particular chain reaction begins. William Conrad guest starred in an early season 1 episode playing a district attorney, and that single performance impressed producers enough that they built an entirely new crime drama around him, called Jake and the Fat Man, launching soon after. And somehow, the strange chain did not stop there at all. A later episode of Jake and the Fat Man featured none other than Dick Van Dyke once again, this time playing a warm, likable, crime-solving doctor instead of a courtroom villain. That guest role proved popular enough with audiences that producers spun it off yet again into its own standalone series called Diagnosis Murder, launching a few years later. So, in a genuinely strange stretch of television history, one single guest appearance by William Conrad in Matlock's very first season indirectly led to not one, but 2 additional television series being created down the line, quietly connecting a Southern courtroom drama, a gruff detective duo, and a crime-solving physician into one long, tangled family tree that almost nobody watching any of these shows individually would ever manage to piece together on their own. 3 separate hit television dramas, spanning multiple decades of network programming, all technically trace their existence back to a single early guest appearance on Matlock. Try explaining that family tree to a casual viewer without sounding like you are making it up, because on paper, it genuinely reads like something a fan invented rather than something that actually happened across real network schedules. Number 1. Griffith secretly explained Matlock's biggest unsolved mystery years after the original show had already ended. Throughout the entire original series, Ben Matlock's strange obsession with cheap hot dogs was treated as an amusing running joke and never actually explained on screen. Fans spent years genuinely wondering why a wildly successful, high-priced defense attorney lived like he was constantly broke and counting every dollar. Then, in 1997, 2 full years after Matlock officially ended its run, Griffith reprised the character in a special crossover episode of Diagnosis Murder, the very spin-off of a spin-off we just talked about a moment ago. And finally, after all those years, the mystery got solved for good. According to that crossover storyline, Matlock had once made a disastrous financial investment in the 8-track tape industry, acting on genuinely bad advice from none other than Dick Van Dyke's character, Dr. Mark Sloan. That failed investment supposedly wiped out a significant chunk of Matlock's personal savings, forcing him into the frugal, hot dog-eating lifestyle audiences had been watching unfold for 9 straight seasons, without ever knowing the real reason behind it. So, yeah, one of the most beloved, unexplained quirks in 1980s television was not actually solved on Matlock itself at all. It took an entirely different show, connected through a genuinely tangled chain of spin-offs, years later, to finally close the case on Ben Matlock's cheapest, weirdest, and most enduring habit. And there you have it, 15 wild and surprising facts about Matlock. Which one shocked you the most, and which ones did we miss along the way? Drop it in the comments because we always love hearing from you and reading through your own memories of the show. And if you want more deep dives into the shows, stars, and stories you grew up watching, make sure to subscribe and stick around because we have got plenty more where this came from. 9 seasons, 3 spin-offs, 1 missing jar of peanut butter, and a mystery hot dog habit later. Ben Matlock still proves that the best television secrets are usually hiding in plain sight, right between the commercial breaks.